Hello and welcome to the FATBOSS guide to Il'gynoth, or Normal and Heroic in Ny'alotha.
This encounter is probably one of the more difficult in the instance, and if you go into this fight blind without much understanding of how the fight works, you'll likely wipe pretty quickly. So let's jump straight in.
So the boss is stationary in the middle of the room and doesn't actually have too much health. Once you get him to 1% health, he'll disappear and phase 2 begins, and this repeats 3 times until you finally kill him off in the final phase 1. During this first phase, you'll want the raid to stay in select quadrants of the room. This is because random raid members will be targeted with Corruptor's gaze. This beam will chase down players, spawning puddles as it goes that last for the duration of the fight. These puddles hurt and silence you, so you cannot stand within them. If these are randomly placed throughout the room, you'll quickly run out of space towards the end of the fight. So by sticking to one quadrant for each phase 1, this will give you the space that you need for the final phase. We start slightly left of the entrance of the room and move clockwise each time a new phase 1 begins. As for the tanks, they always stay one quadrant ahead of the raid, making sure they're still within healing range. They cannot be targeted by the fixate beam, and instead are hit with Eye of N'Zoth. This is a large narrow beam that deals a large amount of damage and applies a debuff that increases the damage you take from the next beam by 75%. You'll want to use a cooldown for the second hit and taunt on 2. Now on Heroic, the raid will also have to watch out for the touch of the Corruptor cast. This will mind control random players in the raid, making them chase down others. If they come into contact with other players, then they will also become mind controlled. So this can spread like a plague if you don't deal with it. Best practice is to spread beforehand and then crowd control players the moment the mind control hits them, at which point all DPS then need to swap to them to break the effect. Be careful when using stuns not to stun players inside puddles, as when the mind control breaks, the crowd control effects will still remain.
Now once you've got the hang of that and the boss hits 1%, phase 2 will begin. At this point, 3 side rooms will open up around the edges of the room, revealing the organs inside. These do nothing but cast Pumping Blood, which spawns a blood ad. This cast is interruptible, so you want to set up an interrupt rotation group for all 3 of the organs. 2 melee interrupts on each of them is enough. Now all of the organs can be damaged during this time, however when one of them is defeated, the fight returns back to phase 1 again and all other organs will go back to full health, so you'll want to focus down on one of them. Whilst doing so, you want to set up a safe spot near that organ for players to stand. This is because a large amount of your raid will be debuffed with Cursed Blood. This creates a large targeting circle that deals light ticking damage, and then a large amount of damage to all players within it when it expires. Having this safe spot to stand in allows all of the Cursed Blood debuffed players to easily spread without accidentally clipping another player. So once the organ is killed, phase 1 returns and you keep playing out the fight like you already did. The only difference is that the organ that was killed will now spawn Blood of Ny'alotha ads, and this cannot be interrupted. These ads will fixate on random players and chase them down. If they reach them, they'll melee hit them and apply a very nasty stacking dot, which fortunately can be dispelled, but ideally it should never hit the player in the first place. When the ad does die, it will explode, dealing a small amount of raid damage, which pretty much stops you from using a strategy where you kite them and then explode a large amount of them all at the same time. Now the ads can be crowd controlled in almost every way possible, so you want to use this to your advantage, whilst all ranged DPS swap to them immediately. When only a single organ has been killed, it's very easy to keep them under control, but once you've killed 2 organs, you'll want ranged DPS to be on them almost permanently. In your third and final phase 2, you may want to have an additional safe spot for ranged DPS slightly behind the normal safe spot towards the middle of the room. This allows them to continue DPSing the bloods earlier, giving you more time to damage and kill them off before they reach their target. After all 3 organs are dead, you'll then have your final phase 1. At this point, you'll want to move to your final quadrant, which should be around the entrance of the room, as this is the furthest point from all 3 organs. But it's not very easy to keep up here, especially when players with mind control have to be damaged first. So be ready to kite and try to keep cleave and multi-dotting on the boss as high as possible. When most DPS cooldowns come back up during this phase, this is where you'll want to use your second pot and Bloodlust. And you may want to make a call at some point to ignore the ads and just crowd control them, just so you can nuke the boss, which is something we did on one of our first kills.
But that's the fight, guys. If you'd like to know more about the encounter or just have handy notes ready for your raid, then check out our written guide over on Wowhead. A link for that can be found in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.
Thanks for watching.